Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Good morning, everyone. I'm an alcoholic named Brian. Hi. If you would, please join me in opening this meeting with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This is our preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees in AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. There may be some of you who are not familiar with our tradition of personal anonymity at the public level. If so, we respectfully ask that no AA speaker or members be identified by full name or picture in published or broadcast reports of our meetings, as well as through social networking. The assurance of anonymity is essential to our efforts to help others. Our tradition of anonymity reminds us that AA principles comes before personalities. At this time, we ask that all cell phones and other electronic devices be turned off, or at the very least, set to silent or vibrate. Thank you. We also remind you that AALA has retained the services of Westside Recovery Audio to record all main speakers and a variety of our workshops. These recordings are available for sale at the company's table located in the front in the hotel lobby. The title of this workshop is Steps 8 and 9, Faith Without Works is Dead, Back into Action. Each speaker will share for approximately 10 to 15 minutes, after which the meeting will be open for questions. Please keep in mind that this is not a sharing meeting, but one in which questions may be asked of the speakers relating to the topic of the workshop. Because this workshop is being recorded, if a microphone is accessible within the room, please use it, identifying yourself and stating your question. If you wish to share in a general way, please avail yourself of the marathon meetings that are taking place throughout the course of the Roundup in Parlor 131. I now have the privilege to introduce our first speaker, Amy S.
Good morning, AALA. I am Amy S. I'm an alcoholic. I want to be mindful of the time. And yes, our topic today are steps 8 and 9 into action. Faith without works is dead. And I've heard from a couple of you today that you're on this step, so it's good that you're here. And I like to qualify first that I'm an alcoholic. I thank you, Jenna, for being with me on this one. And I see some familiar faces. Steps 8 and 9, when I think of steps 8 and 9, and when I was new, my sobriety date is 9/8/97. And what that means to me is just that when I first did this step, I put the brakes on around step 7. And any of you that sponsor, I'm sure you're familiar with sponsees that do the same. I wasn't allowed to cop out behind being a newcomer since the day I got in these doors, and thank God for that. When I started slowing up, I think probably on step 8, and I remember It's such an appropriate topic, though. It's in the big book, too, because I was just refreshing my memory of the big book, that faith without works is dead, into more action, is that, we think, oh, okay, so we've arrived, we've hopefully at this point, I also want to say that you have done the other 7 steps that lead up to step 8, okay, and do them in order and do them with a sponsor. My sponsor is Marianne Finch. My home group currently is Friday Night Fellowship at 8 o'clock in Long Beach, and I am very grateful to be sober. So with that said, your 8 step really should come, in my experience and what I've learned, from your 4 step. So if you've written down some things, and if you've listed a lot of people and a lot of businesses and a lot of institutions and a lot of partners, or husbands, ex-husbands, friends, and whatnot, creditors, these things are going to be rolled over into your list onto your 8 step. And I want to keep it very simple, because I know that the fear crops up in us and we overthink things, and sometimes it's best just to remember that 8 step, it's really, you're just making a list. You're just making a list. Just like Santa, making a list, checking it. And I'm not saying that to be funny. It's like, let's not slow up here, because we're just making a list. And what's interesting is it does say here in the beginning that, remember that in the beginning, it says that we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. And also, too, for some of you that have been around, or that some of you are that newer and just have very good ears, and this thing doesn't come overnight, and the promises don't come true until you're halfway through. They meant the 9th step. They didn't mean the steps. So, but I was terrified. I was terrified of this step. It's no joke. I'm still not happy about it. I'm working on a new 4th with a new sponsor, and or I'm working on my 4th with a new sponsor, and I'm already looking at the 8th step. So, what I can say is it. Someone said it recently perfectly. They said that they heard someone apologize, and they thought, how do you do that? Say, I'm sorry. How do you do that? And with the 8th step, it's like my list was very long. All these names that I was so angry at. And if you have people on there that have harmed you too, don't be shocked that these people have harmed you. My first sponsor said to me, it's only your side of the street that you need to clean up. Keep the focus on you and you'll be okay. You start looking at their backyard, their front yard, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But remember, if you want to stay sober, you're the one in here. For me, I had to look at, because like my big difficult one was my dad. That was difficult. We had a huge strained relationship when I was young, and he was on my 4th step for years, and I put him on my 8th step, and when I did my 9th step, my sponsor decided it was better to send it in writing, because it was that kind of toxic relationship when I was new. Of course, when I did my 4th and 5th, to back it up a little, I didn't have my part for him, and how convenient. And she said, well, what was your part? I thought, well, and truthfully, I said, I don't know, being born. And that really was my perception of the whole situation, that was being born was my part. And she said, how about worrying him? How about lying to him? See, I was one of those, it talks about in the step, it talks about in the books, that we thought, because we didn't do direct harms to these people, that they did not know what we were doing, that they didn't know that you were alive or dead. I didn't call them, they didn't have a number for me, but they didn't know where I was. I just went MIA and thought, because I didn't directly cause you harm, I didn't hurt you, and I got to amend that. I got to send him a letter. I got to write an 8th step, and then I got to write out letters, because I didn't get to wing it and go in there and improv my 9th step. And we don't get to go in there and tell them what they've done wrong either. That's not our opportunity to say, well, the time that you... So if that temptation crops up, resist it. And so when I sent him this letter, basically listing, she wanted me to do it in a general way, that and go to your sponsor. I'm not your sponsor, so this is between you and your sponsor. Listing that I had been selfish, dishonest, all those things, fearful, inconsiderate. Is there anything that I'm leaving out? I was not allowed to use drinking in it. I was not allowed to hide behind that. Is there anything I can do to right my wrongs with you? And as my sponsor put it, if it's anything shy of flying to the moon, you do it. And that terrified me. And he sent it back, and he graded it like a school teacher. And he said it's rather impersonal. And I was furious, and I called her up. Gina, I'm going to call him up right now, and I'm going to, see, now, what I was suffering from was entitlement. Because I got sober, my life should be better, see, you should see what I'm doing. It should be, no, it doesn't work like that. My amends and your forgiveness are two separate worlds. Like, they've been harmed, they're not in a 12-step program. We have our sponsor, we have our people, we have people to support us. They don't have that. And I was not merciful. I still am not that merciful and compassionate. But what I learned that day is he was still hurting from the smarts, my injustices. It speaks about that in the big book. And I had to let that be, that my part was done. He was still smarting. And that hurt. But I do remember I called my sponsor, was the first person I called, which if I look back, I'm like, that's profound that I called. And I didn't react and call him. And she said, you will do no such thing. You are to stand down. And Randy knows who I'm talking about. You are to stand down. Your part is done. Even if they say, forget you, you know what I mean? They don't want to take your call. They don't return your call. Your side of the street, I've been taught, you made the effort, you're done. Now, I've had sponsors say, okay, do it again. Next year we'll repeat it, or just forget about it. Now, so I want to get a little deeper into 9. So that was one that didn't go so good. I had 2 that went south. Of 32 amends that I had to make initially, 2 went south, and that's pretty good odds. That's pretty good odds. Pretty good. One told me, never call me again. And I called my sponsor irate again. I can't believe, It's like I forget. What did I do out there? Like, I must have just been, this is the person that walked into my apartment in college and the bathtub was overflowing on the carpet because I fell asleep in the tub because I was so out of it and so drunk. I could never show up for anything, anybody, couldn't hold together any relationship, friendship, or otherwise, nothing. And now I'm upset because in 5 minutes, because I decided to make what appears to be, it's kind of like one speaker said once, an amends is a lot like saying to the person who's hurt, yeah, remember that thing that you don't want to talk about? Can we talk about that now? That's exactly what an amends is. So you might not get the best reaction. I don't want to kill the suspense for any of you that are sitting on it. Please don't confuse, prudence with procrastination in this step. By all means, in the 9th step, you want to get busy. And, and also, too, there's also the enthusiasts that want to, go off and make an amends to, their best drinking buddy. They want to go religious. They want to go apologize to their significant other about cheating. I think it says when to do, unless to do so would create more harm than good. That, again, is between you and your sponsor. It's also between your conscience and your higher power, your God. I call that God. I usually know when I'm not supposed to be making amends. It's usually that person I want to charge off and make an amends to. And the one that I usually owe an amends to is usually the one I don't want to go to. It talks about in here how that it's harder to go to an enemy than a friend, but we find it much more beneficial. It's much more beneficial to us. So sometimes maybe stack the enemies first, the really difficult ones. Just get over it. Just get off it. It's funny because what the 5th step does for you and the irritable, for me, the irritable, restless, discontent, it left on the ends of the heels of the 5th step, because it talks about when we first come in the rooms, that irritable, restless, discontent falls away until that we're sitting on a 4th, and then we're irritable, restless, and discontent again. It wasn't until we completed our 5th that we were able to look our fellows in the eyes again. And then almost we go through it again, because here we are praying, waiting for these defects to be removed. Okay, that's a lot like our creditors. It might take a little bit longer than that. Some of our bills and stuff, I'm still working on some of my financial amends. Okay, shame doesn't have any place in these rooms. We'll just go get drunk behind it. I've learned that. But just to have the willingness, just a willingness to crank out a sentence, just write down the names. Just just get with your sponsor in the format, that whatever protocol they ask you to do. Remember, we were willing to go to any lengths when we got here, and that faith without works is dead. And so the 9th step, then they just started rolling. You'll find, too, that the ones that go good, like I had people go, well, I'm really glad that you called me with this. There's a poem I'd like to share with you. And I'm all, and again, I'm just so I'm simultaneously in touch with my selfishness and I don't want to hear your poem. But it talks about this is where, we're getting real with our deal, and then we're getting clear with ourselves. We're taking inventory and stock because we can't bring in new things when we're sitting on bad inventory. So we have to inventory this stuff, right, to clear it out. Because God doesn't want to live in a dirty house. So when we're sitting on these things and we don't want to get right with, and these people are opening up their lives and their souls to us, and I'm still like, I don't want to be a part of your poetry. And then someone's opening up some serious childhood damage to me, and I was like, oh my God, that sounds like something for a professional. What an order. I can't go through with it. But you know what I did? I did what you guys taught me how to do. I sat tight and I listened. Because I realized that was a grace and a permission, and that was something I never had because I wasn't even listened to in the bars. I wasn't listened to. I didn't have any friends out there. I didn't have that out there, And today, my dad, we have a relationship today. I have a relationship with my family. I've worked at this for 15 years and 8 months. 15 years and 8 months I've worked. It takes work. I was just discussing with Jennifer, forgiveness from me to you sometimes takes a long road. What I found to be very helpful was to keep reading the promises. Keep reading. Gina B used to say to me, when you're doing the 9 step, if you're finding yourself scared and freaked out, she'd be like, Doug, read the promises every night when you're working on that 9th. Don't hesitate. And with the creditors, it talks about, that remember, like, we need not have any fear of our creditors, because if we shy away from that, you know what I mean? That we are basically, to paraphrase it poorly, we look at drinking again. I don't know about that for you guys, but that's enough for me. Like, is it good enough for you to stop at 7? I don't know. It gives us, again, I want to say that I felt a part of you guys again when I completed my 9. And that broken, hurt void inside me felt a little bit fuller. The sunlight of the Spirit, a little bit fuller. Not to be cheesy at all. And so I just want to wrap this up because Jennifer is anxious to chat. I just want to say to you that that God's grace will shine through you, and that do not engage. I don't care what they say. And as God's children, we do not grovel. So if they start yelling and screaming, we listen. Thank you very much for your time. I'm so sorry that I bothered you with this. And we leave it at that. But we don't get beaten down by anybody, within reason. Obviously, if they're just ticked off, that's one thing. But again, with your sponsor. If you're new, don't just go out there and start amending things. I did this with sponsees of mine. They're like, oh my God, I made an amends to my boyfriend. I'm like, really, what was that amends about? Well, the one boy that I was seeing with the da-da-da. And I think, yeah, you didn't run that by me, did you? Well, no, but it's okay. No, it's not okay. He has a girlfriend, doesn't he? There's some politics. Like, you could have done some more damage. So when we're talking about that other amends that you did by making your supposed alleged amends, next year, then you can do that amends. So I just want to say thank you so much for helping me stay sober. Enjoy the convention. I'm really grateful you had me in your house, and good luck on you to do this. If I can do it, you sure as heck can do it. 32, get it done. Thanks. I'd like to welcome now Jennifer from also long.
Jennifer, alcoholic.
Jennifer.
I like to share what I do on a daily basis, to maintain my sobriety. And what I do is I get in contact with my higher power by reading pages 60 through 63. I say a 3rd and 7th step prayer. I read pages 84 through 88. Some other pages out of the big book, and I've been saying that will be done all throughout this morning. And I don't know. For me, I'm a fall down drunk. That's what happens when I drink. Is I fall down, I get bruises. I don't know what happened to me, and I want you to explain why you didn't take care of me. That's the kind of drunk that I am. And when I finally got to the point where I was desperate and dying and knew that I was completely hopeless and had no idea of what to do, that's when I got a sponsor and started working the steps, and I have a sobriety date of August 4th, 2007. I have a sponsor, and my home group is Bellflower Big Book Group, and I don't know, I've been part of that group for a little over a year now, and if you would have asked me a couple years ago if I had a home group, I would have thought that I knew what I was talking about, but I didn't. That's something that I'm learning as I stay here in AA, is that I don't know everything, and I need to remain teachable and have an open mind. So my first sponsor that I got, she told me that I was screwed, and she didn't say it so nicely. She told me that there was a God and it wasn't me, and that what was I willing to do to, reach my higher power, and was I willing to go to any lengths to stay sober. And she said a bunch of that stuff that very first night. She told me that I wasn't even working the steps for me. I was working for the next alcoholic coming up behind me, and I didn't know what she was talking about at all. She told me that what I found in this book would be better than anything I found in any bottle or any bag, and that was a guarantee. And I can tell you that that's the truth. That's my truth. If I do what this book suggests, then I get to have this life on the inside that I never knew was possible. And so, I don't know. She told me that I was dying and I didn't even know it, and she got me busy on those steps, launched into a vigorous course of action. She told me I'd been living steps 1 and this is my experience. I'm not saying you have to work the steps my way. This is just the way that I worked my steps, And so, and a couple years ago, I would have told you this is the way you need to work your steps or you're going to get drunk. And I've come to see that that's not true. This is just my experience and what worked for me. So my sponsor told me I'd been living steps 1 and 2 out there, and by coming into AA, that was my 3rd step, and I worked on it for a couple weeks, and I got busy writing on that 4th step. By the time I had just 5 weeks sober, around 5 weeks sober, I sat down and did that 5th step with her, and I found out the truth about me, and I was shocked. I had no idea I was selfish and self-centered to the extreme. Self-will run riot. I had no idea that being selfish and self-centered meant that I was always thinking about me and what you were thinking about me, and if you had what I wanted, why didn't I have it? I had no idea that's what that meant, and I don't know, I know that I had gotten a couple weeks for those steps, and when I got to the 8th step, I thought I'd have a week or 2, and she said, you have the weekend, it's a list, and I was like, oh, okay, alrighty then, and she also told me to remember it's just a list. Just write down the names, and I remember just praying to God to help me put pen to paper and let whatever name that needed to come out, help me to have the courage to write it down, and I just wrote it down. But the reason I was so scared is because I didn't want to do the next step, that 9th step. I didn't want to do it. I was so scared of what would happen, because I don't know about you guys, but I definitely need to know what's going on like all the time with everything, and there's no way to know what's going to happen, and I just was building on that higher power, that belief in that higher power that I didn't have when I first got here, that I knew that I needed, and I just was willing. Like it says it a few times in the big book in this on steps 8 and 9. It says at least 3 times that we said at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol, and it says it several times because that's what we need to remember, and I need to remember that still on a daily basis today. So I wrote that list, and I showed up to her with the list, and she said, okay, who's first? It was just that simple. And I was like, okay, I guess my mom, I don't know why I picked her, honestly. She was probably at the top of the list. And she said, okay, we're going to write letters, because she too believed that, like, I'm still delusional. But by the time I'm like, maybe 6 weeks sober? Like, I have no idea the true from the false still, And so she definitely did not want me just running on my own ideas on these amend letter. And I remember going over the first letter with her, and she, like, circled the top part and said, this is good, and she turned it over and she said, this looks nice, and she said, oh, we've got to work on everything else in between. So I had a couple of rough drafts, for the first few amends. There was definitely several drafts, and I don't know, I remember making that first one, and I remember I asked my mom out to eat. We went to, I think it was Coco's, and I remember that I'd heard someone say that they got on their knees and prayed, and that's not what I was told by my first sponsor that I needed to do. She said it doesn't matter, you can pray anywhere, you can pray on the toilet, is what she actually told me that first night. And but I'd heard this lady, that another lady in the program that was making her amends, and she said she had hit her knees before she made it. And I was sitting at Coco's, and I'm like, am I really going to go into the bathroom and hit my knees before I make this amends? And then I remembered, well, I used to get on my knees to puke in the toilet. I think I can get on my knees and pray, And so that's what I did. I went into that bathroom, and I closed the stall door, and I prayed. I just asked God to help me just do this, help me to push aside me and just do what my higher power would have me be. And I went there and I read it, and I don't know, it was amazing. I'm crying and she's crying, and and my amends also included, tell me if I left anything out, and what can I do to make these wrongs right, and she really just had, for that one, she really just said, just keep doing what you're doing, just keep doing what you're doing. And not everyone went that way, but that's the way my first one went, and I made my next one with my dad, and My dad has issues, and it was hard to tell if he was actually really there, like present in the moment, but he was, and I could tell afterwards when it was done that he was. And, my next one was I wanted to make to my sister, she's like my best friend, but she was not wanting to hear this. And I just didn't understand why, and come to find out when she was finally ready, which it didn't take as long as my head made it out to be. It was probably just a few weeks, but I was so determined to get it done, and she had felt like I had abandoned her because she was still drinking, and I had gone off to AA, and I wasn't spending as much time with her anymore, and I was becoming a different person, and, she felt completely abandoned, and that was another cry fest, and I cried with a lot of my amends, and that I definitely did, and that's okay, it's okay. We're humans, we have emotions today, and the fact is, like a few years later, she was sober, making an amends to me. I got to be that example for her. And now we're walking this path together. And I never would have thought that. I never would have thought that was possible. And I don't know. We never know who we're being that example for. And I don't know. So those amends went pretty well overall. I had some other ones, not so much. I don't know. This one's a little odd, but I like to share it anyways. I was making amends to one of my brothers-in-laws. A lot of my amends were to my family. I have 3 sisters. They all have husbands, and there's nephews, and there's aunts, and so I had a lot of family to make my amends to. And when I made it to this brother-in-law, I remember afterwards. I said, okay, well, here goes. And afterwards he's like, oh, that was it. I'm like, well, what did you think I was going to talk to you about? And he's all, I don't know. I thought you were going to ask me for to donate my sperm. I'm like, oh my God, really? And I'm like, I know that they say we're takers in this program, but geez, no, that's not what I was going to ask, and that was crazy, and I remember my amends to my other brother-in-law, who I've known since I was 7, and I had never seen this man cry, and I was sitting across that table, and he was crying over what I did to his sons, the fact that I couldn't show up and be that aunt, and that I remember I didn't even have this written down on my own 4-step, that I remember, but he was talking to me about in that time that you left him hanging when they were supposed to be opening their Christmas presents, and you didn't show up until hours later, looking like a wreck, reeking of the booze, and I remember, how I felt that day, and I remember him ripping me a new one, and saying, are you even sober enough to take your mom to the get-together and stuff, and but I had no idea what I was doing to my family. He definitely opened my eyes to who I really was and who I never want to be again, and that's one of the gifts that I got from doing the 8-step. When I wrote out that 4th and the 9th step too, that's what I mean. When I wrote out that 4th and 5th, I saw who I really was, but it's quite different when you're sitting across the table and you're talking to these people, because then you see it in a whole new light. And thank God for that, because it gave me that much more willingness to keep working the heck out of this program, because I don't want to have to do that again, to be honest. I don't want to be that type of person, and I don't want to have to go back and make these type of amends again, and I don't have to if I'm willing to still go to any lengths to stay sober, and I am today, So, there were also some financial ones. So the way my financial ones happened is I had not paid taxes for a few years out of sheer fear that I was going to owe something because someone at work said I was going to, and I had no idea. I'm not a tax person, and I remember just pushing it off, and, the first thing I did was paid off my restitution that I owed for, a drunk driving, thing, and I made that appointment to go file my taxes, and I was so scared, and I thought I'm gonna have to make payments for the rest of my life, and it was really ended up being funny because I ended up getting money back for all 3 years, and I was like, it's just, to me, that just shows me the power of my head, I'd been holding on to that for so many years, and I would have gotten drunk over it if I didn't take the action, and I ended up getting money back, it was just insane, and I don't know. I remember I got to some people on the list, and I remember going to my sponsor and just going over the list. I'm like, I don't know who's next. And, we met up before a meeting, and, there were some people that definitely a lot of people that still weren't crossed off, on my list. And she's all, well, what about this guy? I'm like, well, I don't think I meant to write his name down, and, and she just said, do you want to be free? Do you want to be sober, and do you want to be free? And I did. And that was to one of my other brother-in-laws. And, that one was a really hard one for me because I really felt like he deserved him. I deserved an amends from him, that's what I felt like. Like the book says, I need to push aside, what other people have done and just look at my side of the street, and that's what I had to do. So, I wrote out that one letter, and I think that one needed a couple of drafts, even though I'd done several by then, and I just made that appointment with him, and it went better than I could have planned. I'm not going to say like I was his best friend after that, because that wasn't true. I never really cared for him, kind of thing. But at least I didn't hold on to that resentment anymore. Like he should have been looking out for me or whatever. I know I put myself in positions to be hurt. I did that. It was no one else's job to take care of me. And I can see that now. But I couldn't see it until I made that amends. I definitely thought he should have been looking out for me. And I don't know, recently I've been working on doing some more work on these steps, because I got a new sponsor about a year ago, and I went through the book again, and I went through the steps again, and come to find out that just because they fall off your credit report doesn't mean you don't still owe them. I really didn't know that. Like, my first sponsor didn't seem to care about it, and this sponsor is like, no, that's not what it means. You need to find these people and pay them. And I'm like, oh my God, really? Like, I was so surprised. I really was. I remember being so surprised. Like, at first it came up because I was talking about a sponsee that I had, and then I just remember thinking, well, I'm not on my 9th step yet, and I kept on pushing it off until I got to the 9th step with her, and now I've been,
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
Like, I had a car repo that I still owed like half the money on, and an old credit card, and then I was calling up this one credit card company and they couldn't find it. So I'm like, so that means I don't have to pay it, right? She's all, no, we'll find somewhere else for you to put that money. So I just thought that was great. I thought that was great. And so I just keep on doing that, and then recently I come to realize that, at one of my jobs, like, I was totally stealing. Like, I didn't think like taking feminine products was stealing, or like taking extra food was stealing, and come to see now at this time in my sobriety that that's exactly what it was. And I need to make it right, but that company no longer is in existence. So she told me to try to find the parent company, and so that's what I'm doing. I'm researching to see if I can find it, so I can set that matter straight. Because the fact is, I don't want to drink. I don't want to drink, and I don't want to drink over a few extra slices of pizza. You know what I mean? Like, that would suck, So I just want to set the matter straight. And, I also found, on this last inventory, I found out that I don't know, she asked, do you think you owe amends to this, this guy that I'd been seeing? And I was like, no. I think that one will cause more harm than good. And she's like, I don't think so. I think you need to write it, And so I did. I wrote it out, and I made that appointment with him. And at first he backed out. We were ready. I was on my way to the coffee shop to make this amends, and he backed out. And I was like, see, there we go, right? She's like, no, we'll wait and see. And if he doesn't call you back to set it up again, then you need to make the next effort again, But luckily, and I say luckily because I mean it, luckily he did call, and I was able to make it face to face. And, it was really, really hard to keep my mouth shut. I haven't had one where it was so hard to keep my mouth shut, because he was saying things and I just wanted to start explaining, like I wanted to go way off of my little paper, and she had made it very clear to stick to the script, So I just kept on nodding my head and smiling and saying, and I remember before I got started with that one too, he's like, I need a cigarette. And I'm like, who's making the amends? You need a cigarette, Go for it, is what I remember saying, and it was just, I just went with it, and because I felt entitled. Like, he works this program, he should be making an amends to me, but it's not about them, it's about me. And the fact that, again, I don't want to drink, and it also talks in the book several times on this step that we have to, it's that demonstration. Like, yeah, I made that amends to my mom, but what am I doing today to keep that relationship going, And the fact is, and it's not like I'm proud to admit it, but I don't really like my mom very much, and I wish that I did, I wish that I did, but I just don't, and I'm working on it, and the way that I work on it is I do take her out we go out to eat once a month, and, I've learned that the short visits are the ones that work out best for us, because we don't, things don't get said, and I've gotten really good at not retaliating when she says things, and she'll repeat things over and over and over again, and I'll have said it, and then I'll said it again, and then I'll just stop talking, I'll just stop responding, because I'm realizing she's not hearing me for whatever reason, she's not able to hear me, but I just need to be the best daughter that I can be, regardless of what anyone else says or does, like the book says, regardless of what anyone else says or does, I need to be the best me that I can be, and I don't know, I talked with my dad. I've been working on with my grandparents recently, making the time to go down there because I just think I'm so busy, I'm so busy. I don't have time for this. It's like make the time, make the time because it's one thing to say it and it's another thing to act it. And I need to be acting the part. I can't just be talking, that talking isn't going to get me anywhere. I need it says it again and again. It needs to be in that demonstration, so I show up for my family today, and I show up on time. I learned that lesson a couple years sober. Like when my grandparents might say that the get together starts at 2:30, that's when they actually want you there, not a couple hours later, especially if you have the appetizers. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I make sure that I show up on time, and I know that I don't have to stay the whole time that I'm there, but I need to be present and in the moment. I need to be talking to people, not like passed out on the couch like I used to be, And so that's what I do. I take the time to talk with everyone, and I try to talk about what's going on in their lives, and I try to just listen because I was never listening. I was always doing my own thing, and I might have acted like I was listening, but I never listened to anybody. And now today I can actually listen to what people are talking about, and pay attention to them. And I don't know. I know that like Amy was saying, that the promises, it says halfway through, and they weren't talking about step 6, They're talking about halfway through the 9-step amends, and I know that the more that I've been taking the action recently on these other amends that I didn't realize I needed to make, and now I know that I do, like I have been getting more and more freedom than I even knew was possible. Like over the last few weeks, I finally felt like something was different. I'm like, what is going on here? And then I realized like that tight anxiety, knot of stress that has been in my chest since I got sober is like not there. And I don't know when that exactly happened, but I think it has to do with me setting these matters straight, because it seems to totally coincide, and I don't know. I'm really grateful to have the willingness today to continue to work this program, and I don't like it when I say to the best of my ability because my ability gets me drunk, It needs to be with my higher power, and because I can't do any of this. None of this is me. The only thing that is me is when I'm running in self-will and doing what I want to do. That's me. Everything else is all God, and all of God that I got as a direct result of working the steps, and especially this one. So that's all that I have. Thank you.
Right. Again, Brian, alcoholic. Thank you both, Amy and Jennifer. That was really awesome. I'm on my 8th and going into 9th, and that's very, very good information for me. I think at this point we were going to open up for questions from the group.
I kind of have 2 questions. One is, my name is Timo. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. And, it's funny because you mentioned your mom, and I just did this. I think I have a pretty good relationship with my mother, but when I made the amends, she was just it was no big deal. And I was like, it's like she said, just continue to do what you're doing. And I'm like, that's not enough. I've got to do more. So I guess I'm not in acceptance of her answer. And then the other one is, I had a situation that involved stalking, and the person was the stalker was trying to make the amends to me. And I said, you know what, I'm not ready. And they still pursued. It was crazy. And I feel like I just wasn't ready. And that was a healthy boundary for me to set. And I was wondering if that was spiritual sabotage on my part to just set a boundary on that, you know what, give me some more time.
So my name's Amy, and I'm still an alcoholic. So is your first question about your mother? You're not sure if it was spiritual sabotage. I'm going to leave that for Jennifer. But of the stalker, this is somebody. The question is somebody was stalking you, and to not allow them to make an amends to you. Is that spiritual sabotage, that you were not ready? If you were my sponsee, if you were a very close friend, well, we are friends in Bill and Bob, but I personally am a big fan of boundaries, and if you're not comfortable with the amends, then that's just no is an okay answer. It's a full sentence, I was told. I don't believe that just because we work a program of amends that, and then we do an 8th and a 9th step, that means that we need to allow everybody to tell us everything. Because back again to, if it's going to create more harm than good, like I have a good example of this. My sister, I was sober a time before this. My sister has such tight boundaries that she almost just won't let you in. So when I went to make an amends with her last time, and I did a lot of damage, we went to the same college, so she saw a lot of the things I was doing. I was just sharing with Jen. I'm not going to go into my fourth and fifth step with you, but it was gnarly, and I scared her and I freaked her out, and she kicked me out of her life for 5.5 years. And when I went to make an amends, she said, I got partway into it. I set up the appointment. I went to meet with her, and she just basically, she didn't want to speak to me. She didn't want to hear it. And I had to respect that. And that was tough. That was tough because I want to tell you how it is. I want to tell you, don't you want to hear? I'm entitled. Don't you see me laying myself, at your mercy? And it's like, but that's part of the deal. That is part of the deal. Laying yourself at the mercy. It's like a good trained dog. It's like, look, if they lay the bone at the foot, they stay there. They don't keep jumping on you. It's like, it's a boundary. You're uncomfortable with it. It's okay to be uncomfortable and say no. Does that answer your question? Okay, and I'm going to let Jen address the other question. Thanks.
Jennifer, alcoholic, and I think that when you're talking about your mom, and I think really, you just need to accept whatever they tell us. That's what it tells us in the book. We need to be willing to do whatever they set forth. And whether that means mowing their lawn every week, or whether it just means keep doing what we're doing. And then for me, whenever someone said that just made me all the more reason to just make sure to continue doing the steps and continue showing up for AA even more, because that's how I make my amends to everyone. And especially there's some people that I'm not going to be making amends to, because it would cause more damage than good. I like to be with other people's people, and so I'm not going to go find them, you know what I mean? And say, excuse me, let me create some more havoc in your life, and it's just, we got to do whatever, whatever is asked of us. And the way that I make those amends is I don't continue that type of behavior, And so if I don't continue that type of behavior that I laid forth in that amends to my mom, I need to make sure that she does know what's going on in my life, and I need to make sure that I'm not being selfish and thinking only about me and putting forth the time and effort to spend with her because she wants to spend the time with me, that type of thing. And definitely always with anything, like we've been saying from the beginning, make sure you talk to your sponsor.
Yes. Yeah. It's okay. You can sit. Yeah.
Jim, alcoholic.
Hi, Jim.
I have 3 years of sobriety, and I remember by listening to the two of you how ridiculous that was the first time I did my amends, because one of the first amends that I did that was difficult was to somebody who I had a lot of life related to music with, and this person said, what song always reminds me of you? And he told me. And I got to this place where I thought it was going to be a great idea to make what I call the amends playlist that's still on my iPod. I actually asked everybody who I made an amends to, what song reminds you of me? And I put so much me into making those amends. And hearing you guys say stick to the script makes me realize the first time I did those amends, I didn't really stick to the script. So I just wanted to call myself out on that. The question I have for either one of you or both of you is, if you've worked your steps multiple times, do you have experience making an amends to a person you did previously? And if so, what kind of qualified for that? And any tips or tricks for looking out for people in my life that I might want to go back to, reasons why? Does that make sense?
I think so. My name's Amy. I'm an alcoholic. So the question is, if you've made amends multiple times to one person.
Made multiple amends to one person.
Okay.
What kind of qualified for that, and what was your experience with that?
Jennifer touched on it, and I agree with it. The question is, if you've made an amends multiple times, do you need to qualify for that and go back? How have I had experience with that? I can't really speak to that because I don't have experience with that, because I was always taught the second part of the amends is you don't do it again.
Oh, okay.
So again, with but I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be smart. It's just we don't do it again.
That's the first time I've heard
Okay. Yeah. So that then because you know, here's the thing. When we're out there drinking, and I'm sure none of you can relate to this, it's I'm sorry. We roll up in drunk. How many, I promise, all these times that you swear off and forever with another, without or without a solemn oath that you will never drink again. And yet again, here we are one more time. That's why I think they wrote it up night. They thought they knew that we were that same person that would be like, oh, can I apologize to you again? It's like, how is that different than when we were out there? So, does that help? Does that address your question? You wanna? Okay, thank you.
So, if you've made amends with someone and they don't feel it's not an amends received for whatever reason, how do you grapple with that on a forgiveness level, spiritual level, self-reflection? Like if someone has said, you know, if they're still in the reactivity of whatever happened, and they're present in your life because they're a family member or something like that, like what are some tips to deal with that person in a loving way, or in a boundary setting way too, that gives you serenity?
So the question is, if you've made an amends to a person and they haven't really received it well, how do you deal with that? How do you grapple with that? It sounds like you're struggling.
Completed, you know, from their perspective, or they're not capable of being complete with this.
Okay. I do have some experience with people just not forgiving me immediately. Thank you for your question. It's incredibly painful. I was taught that we don't get to get better at the expense of others. So sometimes a demonstration of silence and just good faith and showing up, being the best son, daughter, friend that you can be, act as if would be what I've done. My dad didn't want to hear it. My family didn't want to hear it for years and years. They didn't want me around, even though I had made this big amends and I was sober. It wasn't good enough for them. It wasn't years deep into my recovery, and I do mean like 3, 4, 5 years sober, until they really kind of, in other words, it's hard to hear what you're saying. You know what I mean? When you're saying one thing and your feet are going another way. For so many years, it takes a minute for people to shift gears and understand that I think in my heart that you're actually really going to go this path. So that it's probably just self-protective for them. And yeah, it is painful. So I bounce it off a sponsor, I bounce it off friends, I go to meetings and I share about it, and I keep it away from that person so I don't have to make another amends. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? And I pray. I mean, God's always got to be up in the mix. Thanks.
Casey, alcoholic.
Casey.
So, I recently just celebrated 10 years, and I did the first 12 steps when I first, the first year or whatever, and I was excited to do the amends, and I did them the right way. And over the other years, I've done 1 through 5, 6 times. So I think as you both were sharing, I've stopped. And with this, and I'm in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm not even really sure why I came to this meeting, but I think there's a reason why I'm here. But the thought of, and I heard your message loud and clear, just make the list. And when I was new, it was easy to just make the list. But now with 10 years, the thought of going and doing 9-step and making amends to people, I mean, it's a little different now. I've probably, ego. I don't want to be making amends. I don't even know who I need to make amends to. But I know it needs to be done again. So I guess the question would be, when you went back and did it again, did you have problems with your ego having to do this? And what helped you
Okay, so the question is, how did we manage to get through the feelings of doing it again? Like doing it round 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever it is. For me, I had been at a point, where I needed to do something needed to give, and I just was ready to to go to any lengths to stay sober. And not just stay sober, but not to be miserable, and not just to not be miserable, but just to be okay in my own skin. You know what I mean? And so whatever it took, and like I said, this last one, I didn't have very many people that I really had to make the amends to, but they were tough. Like, I did not want to have to go see this dude and apologize for my part, because the fact is, like, this is stuff we did when we were sober. It was very easy for me to be okay with the stuff than the way that I behaved when I wasn't sober. But I did this sober, and I knew that when I wrote out that amends, like, yeah, I had seen my part during the 4th and the 5th, but like, I really see it in a different level when I'm writing out that 9th step amends letter. And I did not want to see who I was, and so. But I didn't want to repeat this behavior either, and not with him, but with anyone else that I'm going to be in contact with, any other potential partner. I don't want to continue that type of behavior, and if that only way for me that I've seen that works is by doing that 9th step, and not to say that I'm not going to fall short, because we do, and it's not like after him I was like all awesome in my other relations. There was another dude that luckily we both were on the same wavelength, so I didn't have to make amends on that one, but like, I don't want to be the same person, because the same person will drink again. And that's just what it got to me. And so I just was, I did lots of praying, and, like Amy said with the other things, is just like talking to my sponsor about the fear, and talking to my friends, like, you're not gonna believe that I have to do this, but I was also told to keep my mouth shut about it after a moment. I didn't know, because those people run into him, so I need to make sure I'm talking to the people who don't run into him, and that type of thing, which I had no idea that I was gossiping, so it's just like getting that clear-cut, precise direction on what to do, and then just doing it. So, hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
If there are no more questions, I just wanted to thank Amy and thank Jennifer. It was very insightful. And thank you, everyone, for your insightful questions. And that's all the time we have. The AALA program and executive committees would like to thank you for attending this workshop, and hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend as we fellowship of the Spirit. After a moment of silence, please join me in the Serenity Prayer.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. Shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.